There comes a point in every man's journey that arrives without fanfare. No explosion of rage. No dramatic declarations. No sudden epiphany with cinematic background music. It slips in quietly like dawn breaking through a window you forgot to close. It's the moment exhaustion finally speaks louder than hope. Not exhaustion with women. Not exhaustion with romance. But exhaustion with the constant mental fog that follows you from situation to situation. You stop wondering what you're missing. You start recognizing why the same script keeps playing with different actors. That shift rewrites everything you thought you knew about attraction. Most men don't talk about this transition because it doesn't feel heroic. Feels like defeat at first. You've done everything right. You've been patient. You've been understanding. You've communicated openly. You've given second chances and third chances and chances you lost count of. And somehow the result stays identical. The faces change but the confusion remains. The names are different but the exhaustion is familiar. You start wondering if something is fundamentally broken inside you. Maybe you're not tall enough or successful enough or interesting enough. Maybe you missed some secret handbook everyone else received at birth. But then something strange happens. You meet a woman completely different from the last one. Different background. Different personality. Different life circumstances. And within weeks the same dynamic emerges. The same hot and cold patterns. The same mixed signals. The same feeling of walking on invisible eggshells. That's when the question shifts. It stops being about what you did wrong. It starts being about what you're finally seeing clearly. This isn't bitterness talking. Bitterness is loud and obvious and burns itself out quickly. This is something deeper. This is pattern recognition kicking in after years of accumulated data. Your brain finally connects dots it refused to connect before. Not because you wanted to see this truth but because you couldn't avoid it anymore. The evidence became overwhelming. The coincidences stopped being coincidences. You didn't harden your heart to reach this place. You didn't swallow some ideology or join some angry movement online. You simply paid attention long enough for reality to interrupt your conditioning. And once that interruption happens, there's no going back to comfortable ignorance. You can't unsee what experience forced you to witness. This is the moment everything changes. Not through anger. Not through resentment. Not through some revenge fantasy against the women who confused you. It changes through clarity. Pure, undiluted clarity that doesn't need validation from anyone. You stopped reading dating like poetry full of hidden meanings and started reading it like data revealing obvious patterns. You stopped interpreting situations emotionally and started interpreting them structurally. And structure doesn't lie. Structure doesn't gaslight you. Structure simply exists waiting for someone honest enough to acknowledge it. Let's establish something critical before moving forward. This conversation isn't ammunition against women. This isn't a manual for manipulation or deception. This isn't about psychological warfare or keeping score. This isn't about winning some imaginary battle between genders. This is purely about seeing clearly for the first time in your life. Society hands men a specific programming from childhood. You absorb it without questioning. You internalize it without examining. Every dating failure becomes evidence of your inadequacy. She pulls away and you assume you failed somehow. She loses interest and you weren't compelling enough. She sends confusing signals and you need to decode harder. She creates distance and you need to pursue smarter. The message stays consistent. Her behavior reflects your value. Her reactions measure your worth. This programming keeps men trapped in cycles that benefit everyone except them. You chase longer than logic permits. You invest more than situations deserve. You explain yourself when silence would serve better. You apologize for things that require no apology. You shrink yourself hoping smaller versions might finally be acceptable. But lived experience eventually overrides social conditioning. Reality interrupts the comfortable narratives you've been fed. You start detecting something unsettling beneath the surface. Different women from different backgrounds with different personalities create identical dynamics. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The coincidence excuse stops working. This isn't about villainizing anyone. Women aren't operating from some collective playbook designed to confuse men. Individual women aren't consciously creating these patterns. But patterns exist regardless of conscious intention. Weather patterns exist without clouds planning them. Traffic patterns exist without drivers coordinating them. Dating patterns exist without anyone orchestrating them. Recognizing patterns doesn't make you cynical. It makes you observant. There's a massive difference between those two things. Cynicism assumes the worst about everyone. Observation simply notices what repeatedly occurs. Cynicism closes your heart permanently. Observation opens your eyes temporarily until better information arrives. Most men personalize every outcome in dating. They treat each situation as completely unique, requiring completely unique analysis. They never zoom out far enough to see recurring themes. Every rejection feels specifically targeted at their specific flaws. Every failure confirms their specific inadequacies. This perspective keeps men perpetually off balance. It keeps them forever adjusting themselves, hoping the next adjustment finally works. But what if the outcomes aren't personal at all? What if they're structural? What if the same dynamics repeat because dynamics follow predictable rules regardless of participants? That possibility changes everything. It removes the crushing weight of constant self-blame. It replaces confusion with curiosity. It transforms painful experiences into useful data points. You stop asking what's wrong with you. You start asking what's actually happening here. And that single question begins the entire transformation process. Here's one of the earliest revelations a man stumbles upon after years of confusion. Women don't primarily react to your vocabulary. They react to your positioning in the relationship landscape. What you say matters far less than where you stand. Your declarations mean nothing compared to your demonstrated values. Your explanations carry no weight against your enforced limits. Your promises disappear next to your actual threshold for disrespect. Most men operate under a beautiful lie that nobody bothers correcting. They believe consistency creates desire over time. They believe effort accumulates like money in a savings account. They believe transparency automatically strengthens emotional bonds. They believe being understanding generates respect and appreciation. These beliefs feel true because they should be true. They align with fairness and logic in how the world ought to work. But attraction doesn't follow moral accounting. It doesn't care about fairness or effort or good intentions. Attraction follows psychological physics that operate beneath conscious awareness. It responds to forces most people never examine closely. It moves according to rules nobody explicitly teaches. I remember believing that verbal clarity solved every relational problem. Tension appeared and I clarified my intentions immediately. She seemed withdrawn and I offered reassurance without hesitation. Confusion surfaced and I initiated long processing conversations. I thought communication was the universal solution to every disconnect. More words would fix what fewer words broke. Paradoxically, the more I explained myself, the faster things deteriorated. The more reasonable I became, the less my reasonableness mattered. She didn't become closer through my vulnerability. She didn't become warmer through my openness. The opposite kept happening and I couldn't understand why. This made zero sense until suddenly it made perfect sense. Composure doesn't repel women by itself. But composure without boundaries reads as infinite availability. And infinite availability eliminates all scarcity. When nothing can be lost, nothing registers as genuinely valuable. When access is unlimited, access stops feeling meaningful. Positioning communicates through actions, not arguments. Where you stand says more than what you claim. A man who tolerates disrespect has positioned himself as tolerable to disrespect. A man who accepts inconsistency has positioned himself as someone who accepts inconsistency. A man who chases mixed signals has positioned himself as someone worth confusing. Words attempt to override positioning, but they always fail eventually. You can declare your worth verbally while your behavior screams something different. You can explain your standards while your actions reveal you have none. The contradiction becomes obvious to everyone except the man living inside it. Once this clicks deeply, something shifts permanently. You stop auditioning for roles you never wanted. You stop performing versions of yourself designed for approval. You stop adjusting your personality hoping adjustments finally work. The performance ends completely. And when that exhausting performance finally ends, the entire game board rearranges itself around your new position. Here's the recurring code men eventually crack after enough repetition. Women respond less to what a man articulates and more to what he permits in his presence. Less to his emotional expressions and more to his unshakable frame. Less to his feelings and more to his boundaries. The words matter minimally. The tolerance levels matter massively. When a man over-explains, he broadcasts insecurity even when internally he feels confident. The act of over-explaining itself signals uncertainty. Why would someone secure in their position need to justify it repeatedly? Why would someone certain of their value need constant verbal reinforcement? The explanation becomes the evidence against him. He's attempting to control her perception through language. He's managing how she sees him through carefully chosen words. And the instant you manage someone's perception, you've surrendered your power to their interpretation. You've placed your value in their hands. You've made their opinion the metric that matters most. Women don't always consciously process this dynamic. They're not sitting there analyzing your psychological positioning, but they sense it beneath conscious awareness. They feel when a man is rooted in his own reality versus rooted in seeking her approval. They detect when someone needs their validation versus simply enjoying their company. That distinction changes the entire texture of attraction. I discovered something that genuinely stung at first. The women I treated with maximum patience often valued me minimally. Not because patience itself repels attraction, but because patience without consequences signals that your time bends infinitely around their convenience. Your schedule is flexible. Your attention is guaranteed. Your presence is permanent regardless of how they treat it. And when your time appears infinitely flexible, you become infinitely optional. Something always available loses urgency. Someone always waiting loses appeal. The patience meant to demonstrate your stability actually communicated your desperation. This is when men stop romanticizing confusion with comforting narratives. She just needs more reassurance to feel safe. She's just protecting her heart from past wounds. She just needs more time to trust again. She's just going through a difficult season right now. These explanations sound compassionate and understanding. They feel mature and evolved. Sometimes these stories hold genuine truth. Past trauma does create protective barriers. Healing does require patience and space. But often these explanations are hope wearing empathy as an elaborate costume. They're justifications for staying in situations your gut already rejected. Here's the uncomfortable reality nobody wants to acknowledge directly. Interest requiring constant resuscitation isn't interest. It's attention extraction. Real interest sustains itself naturally. Real attraction maintains momentum without endless intervention. Real connection doesn't demand you perform emotional CPR every 72 hours. When a man truly grasps this distinction, dating transforms from performance into filtering. The question changes completely. Instead of asking, how can I fix this dynamic? He begins asking, does this dynamic deserve my continued energy? And that single question eliminates approximately 80% of dating anxiety immediately. This realization lands with the most force and changes everything permanently. Attraction isn't something you manufacture through concentrated effort. It's something you uncover through honest observation. You can't build it like a project. You can only reveal it through interaction. The difference between those two approaches determines your entire dating experience. Men are builders fundamentally. It's wired into our psychology and reinforced through every area of life. We construct careers through deliberate strategy. We construct physiques through consistent training. We construct expertise through accumulated hours. We construct forward momentum through disciplined action. Input effort and receive proportional returns. The formula works everywhere else. So naturally we assume attraction follows identical construction principles. Invest more effort and receive more attraction. Communicate better and generate more desire. Demonstrate more value and create more interest. The logic feels airtight. But attraction doesn't respond to gym logic or career logic or any other meritocratic system. It reveals itself through boundary enforcement instead. Boundaries aren't speeches you deliver or ultimatums you issue. They're not conversations about what you will or won't accept. Boundaries are lived behaviors that communicate without explanation. They manifest in what you refuse to tolerate the first time it appears. What you withdraw from immediately without debate. What you decline to explain a second time after explaining once. When a man operates without boundaries, he broadcasts constant availability to everyone around him. His time is always accessible. His attention is always guaranteed. His presence is always negotiable. And when he broadcasts constant availability, he eliminates all productive tension from the dynamic. Without tension, polarity cannot exist. Without polarity, attraction cannot sustain itself beyond initial curiosity. This doesn't require becoming emotionally distant or deliberately cold. It doesn't mean playing games or withholding affection strategically. It requires becoming genuinely selective about where you invest limited time and energy. Selective based on evidence, not potential. Selective based on behavior, not promises. There was a specific turning point where I stopped entertaining ambiguous situations entirely. No dramatic announcement to anyone involved. No explanation about changing my approach. I simply stopped filling silences that weren't being reciprocated naturally. I stopped initiating conversations that felt one-sided. I stopped investing energy into dynamics that drained more than they returned. And something genuinely fascinating occurred in the vacuum that followed. The world didn't implode around me. Relationships didn't all collapse simultaneously. Some women suddenly leaned in with authentic effort they'd never shown before. Others gracefully faded into irrelevance without drama or confrontation. But for the first time in years, neither outcome confused me or wounded my ego. That's the precise awakening moment. Everything shifts. You don't lose women by establishing clear boundaries. You lose comfortable illusions about situations that were never real. You lose false hope about potential that was never coming. You lose investment in people who were never genuinely invested. And those comfortable illusions cost everything while providing nothing except prolonged confusion. When a man withdraws his constant pursuit, something subtle but powerful occurs in the space left behind. A vacuum manifests where his energy used to be. For many women, consistent masculine pursuit functions as ambient background music they've grown accustomed to. Initiating texts throughout the day. Follow-up messages, checking in. Emotional reassurance when things feel uncertain. Energy invested in maintaining positive vibes and smoothing over tension. When that soundtrack suddenly stops, it doesn't register immediately as rejection. It registers as disorientation. Something feels different, but they can't immediately identify what changed. The dynamic shifted, but no announcement was made. Not because women operate with malicious intent, but because relationship dynamics depend on predictable feedback loops that both people stop noticing consciously. If you were the one constantly stabilizing the emotional temperature and you quietly stop, the system either self-corrects or completely dissolves. There's no middle ground. Either she steps up to balance what you stopped providing, or the entire situation evaporates. That binary outcome reveals what was actually happening underneath the surface. Here's the truth most men don't recognize until hindsight provides brutal clarity. Many dating situations don't exist because of mutual genuine interest. They exist because one person tolerates exponentially more ambiguity than the other. One person accepts confusion as normal. One person makes excuses for inconsistency. One person fills the gaps while the other creates them. When your ambiguity tolerance drops to zero, the situation evaporates along with it. Not through confrontation. Not through dramatic breakup speeches. Simply through withdrawal of the energy that was sustaining something that couldn't sustain itself. That's not cruelty. That's precision. That's honesty in its purest form. When you stop chasing, you don't debate mixed signals anymore. You don't negotiate over unclear intentions. You don't seek closure from people who never provided genuine openings. You don't require explanations for behavior that already explained itself through action. You observe patterns without commentary. You choose based on accumulated evidence, not isolated moments. You withdraw without theatrical announcements or emotional displays. And your absence communicates what 1,000 conversations never could. Words can be deflected or debated or dismissed. Absence is undeniable. It creates space where manipulation used to live. It forces honesty where convenient lies used to flourish. It reveals actual interest levels that performance was disguising. Some women will reach out confused about why you disappeared. They'll ask what changed or what they did wrong. This isn't always manipulation. Sometimes it's genuine confusion because they never noticed the imbalance. They never recognized how much you were carrying. They assumed the dynamic was mutual because it felt comfortable to them. Your response in these moments matters less than your position. You don't owe lengthy explanations. You don't owe processing conversations. You don't owe reassurance about their worth. You simply maintain the boundary that created the vacuum. And that boundary either attracts genuine reciprocal effort or it completes the natural ending that was always coming. Here's what's profoundly powerful about reaching this understanding. It doesn't breed anger or resentment. It cultivates genuine calm that runs deeper than surface emotion. You stop requiring constant reassurance about where things stand. You stop asking for relationship status updates every few weeks. You stop chasing the illusion of emotional certainty that never actually existed. You trust observable behavior instead of comforting words. And behavior never lies even when mouths do. Dating becomes fundamentally simpler, though not necessarily easier. Simpler means readable. Clarity replaces confusion. Patterns replace chaos. You know where you stand because actions tell you directly. You no longer attempt to convince someone into compatibility through perfect communication. You no longer remain in situations generating constant mental fog. You no longer silence your intuition in the name of giving effort or being patient. And the most unexpected outcome arrives quietly. You don't become isolated or lonely. You become genuinely liberated for the first time. Because you've stopped carrying dynamics that demand continuous emotional life support. You've stopped performing CPR on connections that can't breathe on their own. You've stopped justifying situations that require constant justification. You stop viewing women as encrypted puzzles requiring advanced decoding skills. You stop viewing attraction as treasure you must earn through impossible trials. You stop viewing silence as personal rejection of your fundamental worth. You begin viewing everything as simple data providing useful information. And data doesn't wound your ego. Data doesn't insult your character. Data simply informs your decisions moving forward. This shift doesn't make you cold or calculating. It makes you grounded in reality instead of fantasy. You can still appreciate feminine energy without losing yourself in it. You can still enjoy connection without becoming dependent on it. You can still be vulnerable without making vulnerability your default position. The difference is you choose when and where and with whom. If you're a man absorbing these words and feeling centered rather than agitated, you're understanding correctly. This isn't about gender warfare or keeping score. This isn't about punishing women for past confusion. This is purely about sovereignty over your energy and attention. It's about refusing to invest precious resources into situations that don't reciprocate investment. If you're a woman reading this and discomfort is rising in your chest, sit with that sensation curiously. Don't react defensively. Don't dismiss it immediately. Ask yourself why these observations create discomfort. Because what men are walking away from isn't authentic love. It's confusion without mutual accountability. It's ambiguity that benefits one side disproportionately. Men aren't freezing their hearts against connection. They're raising their standards for what qualifies as actual connection. They're not abandoning relationship entirely. They're abandoning chaos disguised as relationship. And once a man understands that critical distinction, his entire approach transforms permanently. Not because women lose some imaginary game, but because illusions lose their power to deceive him into wasting years on situations that were never going anywhere meaningful. Here's what's profoundly powerful about reaching this understanding. It doesn't breed anger or resentment. It cultivates genuine calm that runs deeper than surface emotion. You stop requiring constant reassurance about where things stand. You stop asking for relationship status updates every few weeks. You stop chasing the illusion of emotional certainty that never actually existed. You trust observable behavior instead of comforting words. And behavior never lies even when mouths do. Dating becomes fundamentally simpler, though not necessarily easier. Simpler means readable. Clarity replaces confusion. Patterns replace chaos. You know where you stand because actions tell you directly. You no longer attempt to convince someone into compatibility through perfect communication. You no longer remain in situations generating constant mental fog. You no longer silence your intuition in the name of giving effort or being patient. And the most unexpected outcome arrives quietly. You don't become isolated or lonely. You become genuinely liberated for the first time. Because you've stopped carrying dynamics that demand continuous emotional life support. You've stopped performing CPR on connections that can't breathe on their own. You've stopped justifying situations that require constant justification. You stop viewing women as encrypted puzzles requiring advanced decoding skills. You stop viewing attraction as treasure you must earn through impossible trials. You stop viewing silence as personal rejection of your fundamental worth. You begin viewing everything as simple data providing useful information. And data doesn't wound your ego. Data doesn't insult your character. Data simply informs your decisions moving forward. This shift doesn't make you cold or calculating. It makes you grounded in reality instead of fantasy. You can still appreciate feminine energy without losing yourself in it. You can still enjoy connection without becoming dependent on it. You can still be vulnerable without making vulnerability your default position. The difference is you choose when and where and with whom. If you're a man absorbing these words and feeling centered rather than agitated, you're understanding correctly. This isn't about gender warfare or keeping score. This isn't about punishing women for past confusion. This is purely about sovereignty over your energy and attention. It's about refusing to invest precious resources into situations that don't reciprocate investment. If you're a woman reading this and discomfort is rising in your chest, sit with that sensation curiously. Don't react defensively. Don't dismiss it immediately. Ask yourself why these observations create discomfort. Because what men are walking away from isn't authentic love. Men aren't freezing their hearts against connection. They're raising their standards for what qualifies as actual connection. They're not abandoning relationship entirely. They're abandoning chaos disguised as relationship. And once a man understands that critical distinction, his entire approach transforms permanently. Not because women lose some imaginary game, but because illusions lose their power to deceive him into wasting years on situations that were never going anywhere meaningful. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more truth that cuts through the noise.